It began with a photo. A single frame, grainy but undeniable, that would ripple across Maplewood like a bomb. On a sun-bleached afternoon, in the middle of Grand Avenue, the busiest stretch of the small Midwestern city, two police officers forced a black man to kneel on the asphalt. One officer stood behind him, hand pressing down on his shoulder. The other loomed in front, smirking, his palm on the butt of his holstered gun. The man knelt with his palms open, jeans scuffed, sweat dripping down his brow. Behind him, cars idled, horns blared, and bystanders froze in disbelief. Someone lifted a phone. The shutter clicked, and in that instant, humiliation became evidence. His name was David Okoro, a 39-year-old father too, born in Lagos, raised in Chicago. David had moved to Maplewood for steady work at a logistics warehouse. He was known in his neighborhood as the man who fixed bicycles for kids, who shoveled his elderly neighbor's driveway without being asked. Life hadn't been easy. The factory layoffs of 2020 hit his household hard, but David kept grinding. Side jobs, long hours, pride carried in silence. His dream was simple: keep his kids in school, save for a small house, and build something steadier than what he'd grown up with. He never imagined his name would be shouted on national news. The two officers were Patrolman Scott Vickers and Officer Brent Mallory. Vickers, 38, was a stocky, sharp-jawed man with a record of assertive policing. His file carried more complaints than commendations, but each grievance dissolved in the machinery of internal review. He liked to call himself old school. Mallory, 29, was newer, quieter, but already molded in the same aggressive image. He wanted approval, and in Maplewood's apartment, approval meant toughness, even when toughness bled into cruelty. To them, the stop was just another flex of authority. To David, it was something far darker. It was July 14th, a stifling Tuesday, the kind of day when the sun pressed against pavement until the air shimmered. David had left the warehouse after an overtime shift. He carried nothing but his backpack, heading for the bus stop. That's when a patrol car slowed, lights flashing for no apparent reason. "Hey, you!" "Stop right there." Vickers barked through the open window. David paused, confused. "Me? What's wrong?" "Hands out. Bag down." "You fit a description," Mallory added, stepping out of the cruiser. A description of what David thought? But he complied. Years of warnings from his mother echoed. Don't argue. Stay calm. Survive the stop. But calm didn't matter. Within minutes, the confrontation spiraled. Vickers claimed David looked nervous. Mallory muttered something about furtive movements. And then the order, "On your knees." David blinked in disbelief. "Here? In the road?" "Don't make me repeat myself." Cars swerved, honked, passers-by slowed. The officers didn't care. They wanted compliance. Submission displayed for all to see. Shame burned through David's chest. He thought of his children, of how easy a phone could capture this moment, of how humiliation would outlive the stop. And still, slowly he sank to his knees. It was a young woman named Keisha Turner who raised her phone. She was 22, on her way from a hair appointment, when she froze at the sight of David kneeling. Something in her stomach turned. She clicked the photo, then another, then video. Her hands trembled, but she kept filming, even when Vickers glanced away with a glare that said, "Put it down." By the time she ducked into a side alley, the footage was already uploading to Twitter. They let David go after 20 humiliating minutes. No ticket, no charges, no explanation. He gathered his backpack, brushed dirt from his jeans, and walked the rest of the way home with his head lowered, dignity cracked but not destroyed. At home, his wife Angela gasped when she saw him. "What happened?" He shook his head, whispering, "Nothing, just cops." But the internet told a different story. By midnight, the photo had been retweeted 50,000 times. The caption, "Middle of Maplewood, man forced to kneel. What year is this?" The video followed, shaky but damning. Officers forcing a black man down. Smirks plain as day. Local news anchors scrambled. The police department released a one-line statement. We are reviewing an encounter on Grant Avenue for compliance with procedure. But no one was buying it. By dawn, dozens gathered on Grant Avenue. By evening, hundreds. Signs rose. We are not kneeling. Chants echoed between office towers. David watched from his window, stunned. He hadn't asked for this. He wanted quiet, safety, normalcy. But his humiliation had become a rallying cry. Inside his apartment, the weight pressed heavier. Angela worried constantly. Maya, their 12-year-old, came home from school with tear-streaked cheeks. Dad, everyone saw the video. Some kids were laughing. David hugged her, his chest hollow. It's not funny, baby. It's wrong. But deep down, shame gnawed at him. He'd done everything right, complied, obeyed, survived. And still, they had broken him in public. Vickers and Mallory doubled down. It was a lawful stop, Vickers told a reporter, smirk curling his lip. We followed procedure. Mallory added stiffly, he matched the description. Neither could say what description or who had reported it. The department shielded them, releasing statements about ongoing review and community trust. But behind closed doors, officials muttered about damage control. Because the photo wasn't going away. Enter Detective Laura Benton, a 47-year-old internal affairs investigator known for her blunt style. Benton had no illusions about her department's culture. She'd seen careers made on silence and loyalty. But the evidence was too public to bury this time. She studied the video again and again. Vickers pressing David's shoulder, Mallory's uneasy glance toward the camera. Her gut told her this wasn't about law. This was about power. National outlets picked up the story. CNN, NBC, even BBC. Headlines screamed, small-town humiliation. Police force man to kneel. Politicians weighed in. Civil rights groups demanded charges. Protests swelled beyond Maplewood, echoing in neighboring cities. Each chant carried David's name, a name he never wanted in the spotlight. For days he stayed silent. But on Sunday, standing in his church pulpit, he finally broke. I wasn't kneeling because I wanted to, he told the congregation. I was kneeling because I was forced. And I'll be damned if my children grow up thinking that's normal. The church erupted in applause. Cameras captured his words. And in that moment, David stopped being a victim. He became a voice. Detective Benton filed her preliminary report. It wasn't just misconduct, she wrote. It bordered on criminal assault. She placed it on the captain's desk. Hours later, she found the report missing, gone from the system, deleted. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Drop it, Benton, or you'll be kneeling next. She stared at the message, heart pounding. This wasn't just about two officers. It was bigger, much bigger. Detective Laura Benton sat at her desk, jaw tight, staring at the empty folder on her screen. She had uploaded her preliminary report only hours earlier, a document that clearly labeled the kneeling incident as an abuse of authority bordering on criminal conduct. Now it was gone, not archived, not filed wrong, erased. She marched down to the IT office. Where's my report? The technician, pale and jittery, avoided her eyes. I was told not to say. Benton slammed her palm on his desk. Told by who? He whispered, command staff. They said the system needed cleaning. Her blood ran cold. Someone high up was already moving pieces. At home, David Okoro tried to focus on normalcy. He grilled chicken in the backyard, helped Maya with her math homework, tried to laugh at Jordan's goofy impressions. But everywhere he went, people stared. At the grocery store, a woman whispered, "That's him." At church, strangers pressed his hand like he was a saint. Angela, his wife, saw the toll. "You don't have to carry all this, David," she said softly one night. He shook his head. "They put me on my knees in front of the whole city. If I stay silent now, they'll do it to someone else. Maybe next time, that person doesn't come home." Meanwhile, Patrolman Scott Vickers doubled down. At a bar with colleagues, he raised a glass and sneered. "They think they can ruin me with a photo? Please. I've been in this department 15 years. Complaints vanish like smoke. This'll blow over. Brent Mallory nodded nervously beside him, but his eyes darted around. He wasn't as sure, a younger officer asked, but what if internal affairs digs deeper? Vickers laughed. Benton? She's a nuisance, nothing more. Command has our backs. Mallory forced a chuckle, but his stomach twisted. On the second weekend after the incident, more than 1,000 people filled Grant Avenue. Signs read, "We won't kneel. Justice for David." Fire Vickers and Mallory. David didn't plan to speak, but when the crowd spotted him near the edge, chants of "say his name" rippled. He climbed onto a truck bed, heart pounding. "My name is David Okoro," he said, voice shaking but strong. "And I am more than a man who knelt. I am a father, a husband, a worker, a neighbor, and I will not be silenced by fear." The crowd erupted. That night, a new headline hit Maplewood's biggest newspaper. Warehouse worker had prior run-ins with police, sources say. The article dredged up a parking ticket from 10 years ago, an unproven rumor about a bar fight he hadn't even been in. Angela slammed the paper on the kitchen table. "They're trying to paint you as a criminal." David sighed. "That's the playbook. They humiliate you, then justify it by rewriting who you are." Maya whispered, "But we know who you are." Those words gave him strength. Despite the missing report, Benton refused to quit. She tracked down Keisha Turner, the young woman who filmed the video. They met in a coffee shop. Keisha's hand shook as she handed over a phone. "I've gotten messages. Anonymous numbers. They tell me to delete the video, that I'll regret it if I keep posting." Benton scrolled through the threats, bow rising. "You keep this safe," she said firmly. "This video may be the key to locking them up." Keisha blinked. "Do you really think justice can win here?" Benton didn't hesitate. "It has to." Late one night, Mallory sat alone in his squad car, replaying the moment on Grant Avenue in his mind. He remembered the way David's shoulders slumped as he knelt. He remembered the gasp of the crowd, the click of the camera, and he remembered his own hands, gripping David's arm, forcing him down. His reflection in the cruiser's rear-view mirror stared back, accusing. He muttered to himself, "What have I done?" Maplewood itself was splitting in two. Some residents rallied for David, calling for reform. Others rallied for law and order, waving flags, shouting "Back to Blue." At one diner, two old friends nearly came to blows. "You saw the video," one shouted. "He was humiliated for nothing." The other barked back, "Cops keep us safe. You'd be crying for them if your house got robbed." The wedge deepened. Neighbors turned cold. Families split over dinner tables. Detective Benton found an unlikely ally in Assistant District Attorney Marcus Hale, a methodical lawyer with a reputation for fairness. He listened as she laid out the erased report, the threats to Keisha, the smear campaign. He leaned back, frowning. If command is covering for Vickers, this isn't just an IA problem. It's systemic. But if we move too fast without airtight evidence, they'll crush us. Benton asked, "Then what do we do?" Hale's answer was grim. "We dig deeper than they expect. And we don't stop, even when they come for us." At home, David received his first anonymous call. A gravelly voice sneered, "Stay out of the spotlight, or next time you won't get up from the ground." He hung up, fist trembling. Angela clutched his arm. "David, maybe we should move. Leave Maplewood." But he shook his head. "If I run, what lesson do I leave my children? That fear wins." The police union held a press conference. Their president declared, "Officers Vickers and Mallory acted within protocol. The hysteria around this incident is being fueled by activists who want to destroy this department." Flashbulbs popped. Reporters shouted questions. But the message was clear. The department was closing ranks. Ben watched the broadcast, jaw tight. "Protocol," she muttered bitterly. "If humiliation is protocol, then the whole damn book needs rewriting." One evening, Ben received an unmarked envelope slipped under her office door. Inside was a flash drive. When she opened it, she found something explosive, body cam footage from Vickers himself. It showed him sneering as he shoved David down. His voice was audible. "On your knees." Let them all see what happens when you mess with us. Her pulse raced. This wasn't just misconduct. This was intent. But the very next morning, before Benton could present it, snippets of the footage appeared online, edited to make it look like David was resisting. The department released a statement. Partial video confirms officers acted reasonably in tense situation. Benton slammed her desk. They're twisting evidence. Someone inside leaked a doctored version. Hale sighed. Then we find the original, and we make sure it sees the light of day. Mallory's guilt grew heavier. He received a late-night call from Vickers. "Keep your mouth shut," Vickers snapped. "This storm will pass. But if you turn on me, you'll go down with me." Mallory hung up, sweat dripping down his neck. For the first time, he considered calling Benton, but fear stopped him. That Friday night, Benton returned to her car after a long shift. She slid into the driver's seat, tossing her bag aside. The engine roared to life, then sputtered. She frowned, twisting the key again. That's when she noticed a faint blinking light under her dashboard. Her blood froze. A bomb. She scrambled out just as a device hissed, smoke curling. An explosion rocked the parking lot, shattering windows, alarms blaring. Benton hit the pavement, ears ringing, heart pounding. Someone wasn't just covering up misconduct anymore. They were willing to kill for it. Detective Laura Benton coughed as black smoke billowed from her mangled car. The explosion had set off alarms across the precinct. Officers running out into the night. Some shouting, some frozen. She staggered to her feet, clothes singed, ears ringing. Someone tried to help her up, but her eyes were on the car, what was left of it. That wasn't a warning. That was an execution attempt. The message was clear. She was getting too close. The FBI descended within hours. Agents combed the lot, bagging fragments of the device. The precinct chief made a hollow statement. "We will fully investigate this tragic incident." Benton sat on the curb, jaw tight. Agent Rosa Delgado knelt beside her. "This wasn't random," Delgado said softly. "Somebody inside your department wanted you silenced." Benton gave a bitter laugh. "Tell me something I don't know." The next day, David Okoro stood on the courthouse steps. His hands shook as he gripped the microphone. "I didn't ask to be here," he told the swelling crowd. "But when they made me kneel, they weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to remind all of us of our place." The chants grew louder. "We won't kneel. We won't kneel." David glanced at Angela, who stood with her children at the edge of the crowd. Her eyes were wide with worry, but she nodded, urging him forward. "And I say to them, our place is here, standing, speaking, demanding justice." The crowd roared. Officer Brent Mallory couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw David's face in the street. He heard the crowd chanting his name. He knew Vickers was dangerous, but the bomb shook him. If they'd try to kill Benton, what else would they do? At 3 a.m., he picked up his phone. His thumb hovered over Benton's number. He put it down again. Fear still had its grip. Though the blast hadn't seriously injured her, Benton was ordered to rest. Her body was fine, but her mind was on fire. She replayed the moment she saw the blinking light. Someone had known she'd be in that car. Someone close. And then she remembered. Only 3 people knew she'd worked late that night. Her captain, her partner, and someone in the union office. Maplewood was boiling. One camp shouted for Vickers and Mallory to be fired immediately. The other warned against witch hunts and insisted the officers were heroes keeping order. Graffiti appeared on the precinct walls. No kneeling. Counter graffiti appeared days later. Blue forever. The city council chambers filled with screaming matches. Reporters camped outside every meeting. David found his own neighbors divided. Some avoiding him altogether, others slipping him notes of support. Late one night, David drove home from a community meeting. His kids slept in the back seat. A police cruiser appeared in his rear-view mirror, tailing him closely. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. The cruiser didn't flash its lights. It didn't pass. It just followed for 3 miles. When David finally turned into his driveway, the cruiser slowed, then drove off into the dark. He sat frozen, sweat dripping down his brow. This wasn't policing. This was intimidation. Benton showed up at David's door the next morning, still smelling faintly of smoke from a bombing. "They tried to kill me," she said flatly, "and I think they'll come after you next." David frowned. "I'm just a warehouse worker. I'm nobody." She shook her head. "Not anymore. You're the symbol they're afraid of." Angela stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Then what do we do? Hide? Leave? We can't live like this." Benton's answer was chilling. "We fight back. With evidence. With truth. With everything they've tried to bury." Assistant DA Marcus Hale joined them later that day. He laid files across David's kitchen table. Citizen complaints against Vickers and Mallory, most dismissed without investigation. "This is a pattern," Hale said. Dozens of people filed reports, all swept aside. The union protected them. Command protected them. "But if we show the public the scale," Angela interrupted, "they'll come for us harder." David stared at the stack of files. Each one was a story like his. Each one ignored. He said softly, "Then let them come." Meanwhile, Vickers was fuming. At a closed-door union meeting, he slammed his fist on the table. "They're turning me into a villain. I was doing my job." The union president muttered, "You're a liability, Scott. This heat's too much." Vickers' eyes narrowed. "You think you can cut me loose? You wouldn't have half your funding if it wasn't for me keeping order." The room went silent. Everyone knew what he meant. Vickers had dirt on them all. 2 nights later, Benton received a plain manila envelope shoved under her apartment door. Inside, photos, surveillance stills of David, walking his kids to school, shopping with Angela, leaving church. On the back of one photo was scrawled, "Control him or we will." Benton's stomach twisted. This wasn't just intimidation. It was a threat of disappearance. That night, David sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else went to bed. He stared at the photo of himself walking Maya to school. His daughter's smile frozen in time. His own posture casual, unaware of the lens on him. Tears blurred his vision. He whispered, "God, I just wanted to live quiet. Why me?" Then he clenched his fists. "Why not me?" Finally, Mallory broke. At 2 a.m., he called Benton. His voice shook. "I can't carry this anymore. Vickers, he's planning something bigger. He says if this city doesn't shut up, he'll make an example out of someone." Benton sat up straight. "An example? Who?" Mallory hesitated. "David." He said David's gotten too loud. By dawn, Benton, Hale, and Mallory sat together in a diner booth, whispering. Mallory explained Vickers' plan, lured David into another stop, escalated, and claimed he resisted. Benton's eyes hardened. "We set a trap instead. Why are you up? Record him saying it." Mallory paled. "If he finds out..." Benton cut him off. "If we don't, David's dead." That evening, David attended a prayer vigil downtown. Hundreds gathered with candles, chanting softly. Suddenly, shouts rang out at the edge of the crowd. A group of masked men pushed through, shoving people aside. One pointed at David, yelling, "There he is." The crowd panicked, scattering. Benton fought through the chaos, eyes searching for David. But by the time she reached the center, David was gone. In his place lay his canvas tote, files scattered on the pavement, just as they had been the day he was forced to kneel. The vigil had dissolved into chaos. Candles trampled, hymns drowned out by screams. Detective Laura Benton knelt in the center of the plaza, staring at David Okoro's spilled tote bag. Case files fluttered in the evening breeze like discarded confetti. But David was gone. Her radio crackled. Units responding. Suspects fled in the dark, then heading north on Mill Road. Benton's stomach dropped. A kidnapping. In front of hundreds. In front of cameras. And somehow, no one had stopped it. When Benton knocked on David's apartment door an hour later, Angela opened it with wide, frantic eyes. "Where's David? He's not answering his phone." Benton swallowed. Angela, he was taken. The scream that followed tore through the hallway, raw and primal. Maya clung to her mother's side, sobbing. Jordan punched the wall, shouting, "They can't take him again! They can't!" Benton promised, "We'll get him back." But inside, doubt gnawed. She'd seen this pattern before. People disappeared, and sometimes they didn't return. The Maplewood Police Department issued no alert, no Amber-style notice, no pursuit bulletins. At a press conference the next morning, the chief muttered, "We are looking into the circumstances of Mr. Okoro's absence." Absence, not kidnapping. Reporters shouted, "You mean he vanished in front of a crowd?" But microphones were quickly cut. For Benton, the silence was proof. The department wasn't just failing. It was complicit. By nightfall, Maplewood was a powder keg. Protesters marched with signs reading "Where's David?" and "Bring him back." Counter-protesters gathered, accusing activists of faking the disappearance for political gain. Clashes broke out. Tear gas hissed. Rubber bullets flew. For Angela, watching footage on TV, it felt like her husband had been swallowed by a war she never asked for. Brett Mallory sat in his car, drenched in sweat. He'd known about Vickers' threats. He'd warned Benton. But he hadn't believed they'd actually take David. Now, his phone buzzed with a text from Vickers. "Keep your mouth shut, or you're next." Mallory's hands shook as he deleted the message. He was trapped between two worlds, loyalty to the badge and the weight of his conscience. Late that night, Benton met Assistant DA Marcus Hale in a diner. Over cold coffee, they mapped out what little they had: eyewitness reports, shaky footage, one partial license plate from a fleeing van. "It's not enough," Hale muttered. "The feds won't move without solid evidence. And local PD won't lift a finger." Benton tapped her pen. "Then we build it ourselves. We follow the van. We squeeze Mallory until he cracks. We find David before he disappears into a file cabinet labeled unsolved." Hale leaned back, eyes heavy. "And if he's already gone?" Benton's jaw set. "Then we drag the truth out anyway. But I'm not giving up yet." Angela's phone rang at 2 a.m. The voice was distorted, mechanical. "If you want your husband back alive," it said, "tell the crowds to stop. Tell Benton to stop. Every chant makes his life shorter." Then the line went dead. Angela collapsed on the couch, clutching the receiver. She wanted to scream, to beg, to bargain. Instead, she whispered prayer. The next day, Mallory showed up at Ben's apartment, pale and shaking. "They've got him," he blurted. "Vickers and a couple union guys. They're holding him somewhere off the books. A hunting lodge outside the city." Benton leaned forward. "Where?" Mallory's voice cracked. "I don't know exactly, but I heard Vickers bragging. Said they'd keep him until he shuts up, or forever." Hale swore under his breath. Benton grabbed her coat. "Then we find that lodge." 2 days later, Benton and Hale drove miles north, following county records of union-owned properties. They found it, a weathered lodge tucked in thick woods, chain-link fence around it, a black SUV parked outside. Through binoculars, Benton spotted figures moving. One matched Vickers' build. Another dragged something heavy. Her heart pounded. Was it David? Hale muttered, "We need backup." Benton shook her head. "If we wait, they'll move him again. We go in now." Night fell. Benton crept toward the lodge, gun drawn. Hale stayed close behind, flashlight off. From inside came muffled shouting. Benton's stomach twisted. It sounded like David. She signaled to Hale, then kicked the door open. Chaos erupted. Men scrambled. Vickers swore. Benton shouted, "Police! Hands up!" But before she could reach the back room, someone hurled a flashbang. The explosion blinded her, ears ringing. When her vision cleared, the room was empty. David was gone. On the floor lay only a single item: David's torn wallet, his children's photos still tucked inside. Benton picked it up, heart sinking. Hale cursed. They were tipped off. Someone knew we were coming. Benton's chest tightened. It wasn't just corruption anymore. There was a mole, feeding their every move. Back in Maplewood, the city was unraveling. News of the failed rescue leaked. Protesters screamed betrayal. Counter-protesters demanded order. Angela clutched her husband's wallet like a lifeline. Maya and Jordan cried themselves to sleep each night. And David? Somewhere out there, he was alive. Or worse. Benton returned to her apartment near midnight, exhausted, still gripping David's wallet. The door was ajar. She raised her weapon, heart pounding. Inside, her living room light was on. On the table sat a fresh manila envelope. Hands shaking, she opened it. Inside was a photo. David, bound to a chair, bruised but alive, a gun pointed at his head. On the back, you have 72 hours. Drop the case, or he dies. Benton dropped into a chair, the photo slipping from her fingers. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was a countdown. Detective Laura Benton stared at the photo again. David bound, battered, a gun to his head. The scrawl on the back haunted her. 72 hours. Drop the case, or he dies. She sat at her kitchen table, palms pressed against her forehead. She was exhausted, terrified, but above all, furious. They weren't just silencing a witness anymore. They were daring her to play their game. Angela clutched the photo when Benton showed her. Tears streaked her face. They'll kill him, Laura. If stopping the protest saves his life, I'll do it. I'll beg people to stop. Benton shook her head. That's exactly what they want. If they win this time, they'll do it again. To the next family. The next voice. Angela's voice broke. But he's my family. My husband. The room fell silent. No easy answers. Just pain. David Okoro's world had shrunk to a chair, rope biting his wrists, a hood pulled off only when they wanted to feed him scraps. He recognized one voice among his captors. Scott Vickers. You think you're a hero, huh? Vickers sneered one evening. Out there playing martyr. All you are is a headline that'll fade. David lifted his chin, even through swollen lips. Headlines fade, but truth doesn't. The back of Vickers' hand left his cheek stinging, but David didn't flinch. At the DA's office, Ben spread maps and files across the desk. We got 3 likely properties left, she said, all tied to the union. Any of them could be holding David. Hale rubbed his temples. We've got no warrant. The feds won't move on hunches. If we storm the wrong one, they'll bury us. Benton leaned closer. Then we need proof. And we've got one chance, Mallory. Officer Brett Mallory sat in his car outside the Union Hall, gripping the steering wheel. He was drowning in guilt. He'd watched Vickers plan this. He'd stayed silent too long. Finally, he dialed Benton. I'll help, he whispered. But you've got to protect me. If they find out I flipped. Benton cut in. You'll be dead. I know. But if you don't, David will be. That night, Benton and Mallory met in a deserted parking lot. Mallory slid a small USB drive across the seat. I recorded him. Vickers. He admitted holding David. Said the union pays for special cleanups. Benton's eyes widened. This is it. The nail in the coffin. Mallory's voice cracked. Then nail it fast, because if he suspects me, he'll come for my family. Despite Benton's warnings, Angela stood before cameras the next day. I'm begging whoever has my husband, let him go. He's not a symbol. He's not your pawn. He's a father, a husband, a man who deserves to come home. Her voice trembled, but her words spread like wildfire. Across Maplewood, murals of David appeared overnight, his face resolute above the words, "We will not kneel." The kidnappers had tried to silence him. Instead, they amplified him. The response from police was brutal. Protests were met with batons and tear gas. Videos of officers dragging teenagers into vans went viral. The city felt less like Maplewood, more like a war zone. And still no sign of David. In the lodge basement, David whispered prayers in the dark. He thought of Maya's drawings on the fridge, of Jordan's soccer games, of Angela's laugh when he burned toast. Each memory was a lifeline. When his captors taunted him, he stayed silent. When they demanded he denounce the protests, he refused. Every no was a victory, even tied to a chair. Benton and Hale presented Mallory's recording to the FBI. The agent in charge shook his head. It's strong, but it's not enough. We need eyes on David alive. Otherwise, it's circumstantial. Benton slammed her fist on the table. They're gonna kill him, and you're telling me to wait? The agent didn't flinch. Without solid proof, we risk blowing the case. One wrong move, and everyone walks free. Benton stormed out, seething. Mallory agreed to wear a wire to a union meeting. His heart pounded as he sat across from Vickers. You think Benton's still sniffing around? Vickers muttered. Mallory forced a laugh. She won't last long. Not after what we did to her car. And Okoro? He's finished. The wire captured every word. But as Mallory left the meeting, he saw Vickers watching him a little too closely. That night, Ben got a call from Mallory. His voice was ragged. They're moving him. Not the lodge anymore. A warehouse near the river. Benton's pulse quickened. When? Tomorrow night. Midnight. If you don't move then, you'll never see him again. Benton and Hale gathered a small team of trusted feds. They planned a raid, quiet, precise. Angela begged to come. Benton refused. If this goes wrong, we can't risk you two. Angela only whispered, bring him back. Please. The warehouse loomed at midnight, shadows stretching across cracked pavement. Benton's team slipped inside, weapons drawn. Voices echoed from the back room. Benton's heart leapt. It sounded like David. She signaled the team. They burst in, but the room was empty. Just a chair, rope, blood on the floor, and a single note taped to the wall. Too slow. Benton's radio crackled. Static. Then a voice, distorted but familiar. You're chasing Ghost Detective. He's not here. He's ours. And if you keep coming, you'll find him in pieces. Benton froze. Because the voice wasn't Vickers. It was her own captain. Detective Laura Benton stood frozen in the dark warehouse, the radio still hissing. Her captain. It wasn't Vickers. Not Mallory. Not the faceless men in ski masks. Her own commanding officer had just threatened David's life. Hale muttered, Did I hear that right? Benton's hand trembled as she lowered the radio. Yeah, you heard it. Her captain, a man who had mentored her, promoted her, vouched for her, was part of this. Angela Okoro had spent weeks begging, praying, pleading for help. But when she saw Benton return from the raid with blood on her jacket and David's empty chair on her phone, something inside her snapped. No more waiting, she told Benton. No more trusting people who bury files and shrug when fathers vanish. If you can't bring him back, I will. Benton reached for her arm. Angela pulled away. Don't tell me to stay quiet while my husband dies. Her voice was calm, cold, steely. The voice of a woman who had lost fear. In a hidden location, concrete walls dim fluorescent light. David Okoro's body was failing. His wrists were raw from rope. His lips split, his ribs aching from blows. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but his mind clung to fragments. His daughter's laughter. Jordan's soccer ball rolling across the yard. Angela's hands on his shoulders when he felt weak. Every memory was a weapon against despair. When one guard sneered, You'll beg before the end, David whispered, I'll die standing in my heart. Officer Brent Mallory felt the walls closing in. Vickers' eyes lingered too long at meetings. The captain's tone grew sharp. Funny how Benton always seems to be one step behind us, the captain said one evening, gaze flicking toward Mallory. Maybe someone's feeding her. If I find out who... Mallory forced a laugh, but sweat rolled down his back. He wasn't sure how much longer he could play both sides before they crushed him. The next morning, Benton walked into the precinct and felt the change. Conversations stopped when she passed. Doors closed. Colleagues avoided her eyes. Her captain sat at his desk, calm, smiling faintly. Rough night? He asked. She wanted to draw her weapon right there. Instead, she said evenly, long night. His smile widened. Well, some things are above your pay grade. Leave it alone. Benton turned to leave, rage burning. But her legs shook. She wasn't just up against Vickers anymore. The rot was higher. Assistant DA Marcus Hale stormed into Benton's office that afternoon. They're blocking me, he said, tossing down a file. Every motion, I file gets buried. Every judge I approach suddenly remembers a golf game with the union. Benton scanned the papers. Suppression orders. Recusals. All tied to the same network of names. This isn't just a union, she muttered. It's a whole machine. Police, judges, council members, all feeding off each other. Hale leaned forward. And David's life is the price they're demanding to keep it running. Angela went live on social media that night. She held David's wallet up to the camera. They took him because he wouldn't kneel again. They took him because he stood tall for all of us. And they think fear will shut us up. Well, I'm not afraid. If they kill him, the whole world will know Maplewood is run by cowards in uniform. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, national outlets picked it up. Hashtag Bring David Back trended across platforms. The kidnappers had wanted silence. Instead, the spotlight grew hotter. A guard slipped David a crust of bread one night. Different from the others. Younger. Nervous. You don't deserve this, the guard whispered. I got a sister. If this happened to her... David looked at him, eyes tired but unbroken. Then help me. Help her. Help everyone. The guard hesitated, then quickly slipped away. But David's heart surged. There was still humanity in the cracks of this machine. Mallory called Benton at 2 a.m. It's not just a captain, he said. There's someone else. Someone feeding them everything you do. Who? Benton pressed. Mallory's voice broke. I don't know yet, but it's close. Closer than you think. The line went dead before she could ask more. Protests erupted outside City Hall, thousands chanting David's name. Inside, council members whispered nervously. One finally admitted, if the feds step in, we're finished. Another hissed, better let Okoro disappear quietly than tear the city apart. But the crowd outside only grew louder. The city was already tearing apart. Angela confronted Benton again. You keep saying, wait. But every hour they have him is another hour they break him. Benton shot back. You think I don't know that? You think I sleep while he's in chains? I'm fighting with what I have. If I move too soon, they'll kill him and bury the evidence. Angela's voice dropped. If you fail him, I'll never forgive you. The words cut deeper than any knife. Vickers himself entered the room one night. He leaned down, sneering. You've got one more chance. Tell your wife to shut the protest down, or your kids will grow up without you. David spat blood onto the floor. They'll grow up knowing their father didn't kneel. Vickers' boot slammed into his ribs. Pain exploded, but David didn't scream. The young guard slipped another note into David's pocket one night. Scrawled handwriting, barely legible. Warehouse by the tracks. Midnight transfer. Don't give up. David clutched it like scripture. At the same time, Ben received an unmarked package at her apartment. Inside, photos of David, new ones. Proof he was still alive. But there was something else. A receipt. For fuel. Bought with a union credit card. Near the rail yard. Her pulse quickened. The note and the receipt aligned. Benton and Hale mapped it out. The warehouse. The tracks. The timing. We've got one shot, Benton said. We missed this, and he's gone forever. Hale nodded grimly. Then we don't miss. At 11:45 p.m., Benton and a small team crouched near the rail yard, eyes fixed on the warehouse. Engines rumbled inside. Shadows moved. Suddenly, Benton's phone buzzed. A message. From Mallory. Don't go in. It's a setup. They know you're coming. Benton's chest seized. If Mallory was right, they'd walk into an ambush. But if they hesitated, David might vanish forever. She looked at Hale, looked at the warehouse, and whispered, God help us. Benton's heart pounded as she read Mallory's warning. Don't go in. It's a setup. They know you're coming. Her team looked at her, waiting. Hale whispered, if he's right, we walk into a kill box. If he's wrong, we lose David forever. Benton took a deep breath. We split. Half circle wide, cover the exits. The rest with me. No more waiting. Her voice was steel. As they crept closer, gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the night. Vickers' men poured from the warehouse, firing blindly. Benton dug behind a crate, shouting, "Return fire! Control bursts!" Inside, David heard the chaos. Shackled but alive, he knew rescue had come, or death. He braced for either. Vickers stormed into the basement. "Time's up." He raised his gun. At that exact second, Benton kicked in the door. Shots cracked, glass shattered. Vickers spun toward her, eyes blazing. Their standoff had finally come. "Drop it, Scott." Benton yelled, weapon trained. Vickers smirked. "You won't shoot me. You need me alive." David rasped, "He's wrong. He'll never stop." For one terrifying second, Benton's finger hovered. Then she fired, one precise shot. Vickers crumpled, gun clattering away. The room went silent, except for David's ragged breathing. "Laura," he whispered. Benton rushed to him, breaking his chains. "You're going home." Back at the precinct, Benton slammed Mallory's wire recordings onto the table in front of her captain. The captain's smile faltered as his own voice played back. "Threats, orders, cover-ups. Looks like you're the one out of your pay grade," Benton said coldly. Federal agents stepped in, cuffs ready. The man who had ruled the department with an iron fist was led away, shouting about loyalty and brotherhood. The mask was gone. The rot was undeniable. Angela's knees buckled when David walked to the hospital doors, battered but alive. She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. Maya clung to his side. Jordan whispered, "I knew you'd come back." David kissed Angela's forehead. "I almost didn't. But your voice, kept me alive." The family's embrace was more powerful than any speech, any protest. It was survival. It was defiance. Weeks later, Maplewood's courthouse overflowed. Cameras lined the steps. Inside, Vickers, the captain, and several union leaders sat shackled. The charges: kidnapping, conspiracy, obstruction, attempted murder. Hale laid out the evidence. The recordings, the photos, the threats. Benton testified. Mallory testified, his voice trembling but firm. And finally, David spoke. "They made me kneel in the street to break me. They chained me in the dark to erase me. But I am still here. We are still here. And justice doesn't kneel." The jury's verdict was swift. Guilty. Maplewood shook for months. The police union fractured. The chief resigned. Federal oversight swept in. But scars remained. Families of other victims came forward. Old cases were reopened. The trust between police and community lay in ruins. For David, healing was slow. Nightmares woke him often. But each morning he rose, Angela by his side, his children watching. And every time he walked downtown, people stopped him, not to pity him, to thank him. On the anniversary of his release, a new mural appeared on Main Street. David, standing tall, chains broken at his feet. The words above, "We will not kneel." Angela traced the painted lines with her fingers. "This isn't just about us," she whispered. "It's about everyone who's ever been told to kneel." David nodded. "And everyone who ever refused." Narrator's voice. What happened in Maplewood wasn't an accident. It was a system designed to protect itself, until one family, one man, one detective refused to back down. It cost blood. It cost trust. It nearly cost a life. But it exposed the truth, that silence is the greatest weapon of oppression, and courage the sharpest answer. And so, as the gavel fell and the guilty were led away, one question lingered in the air. Not for the jury, not for the judge, but for us. When the moment comes, when injustice demands silence, will we kneel, or will we stand?